Hey, the Dodgers won a big game. The Brewers can't lose. But are we overlooking and disrespecting the Toronto Blue Jays?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and good morning, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of us is just by following us on YouTube and posting comments down below. Today's episode is sponsored by our good friends over at FanDuel. The football season is right around the corner. Has it started yet or no? I don't know. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. It's the time to do it. Now, hey, let's before we go on and start this day, a lot of stuff to cover on a fun. This has been a fun weekend of baseball, and one where a couple of teams have stepped up and showed us that hey, they were down, but they're dust themselves back off again. They chumbawamba it. And let's face it, they're two teams that are just playing better than others. And we focused a lot on the Brewers recently. I'm going to be putting a little bit of the camera north of the border today because they're just impressing the heck out of me. Anyway, let's go through a couple of things here first. So let's go through the trivia question. A lot of people put in a answer for this one. Who homered for San Diego in the only World Series game that the Padres have ever won in franchise history? I got a bunch of guesses on this one. The Padres have won a grand total of one World Series game, not World Series. The only World Series they ever won was in the 1980 made-for-TV movie "The Kid from Left Field" with Gary Coleman and Robert Guillaume, and a very, very drunk Ed McMahon. We got a couple of guesses. Pigskin Petey guessed Ken Caminiti. A good guess because he was a star and one of their pennant winners. But the 1998 San Diego Padres got swept by the New York Yankees. Three of those games, people talk about that World Series as if the Padres didn't even show up. Three of those games were actually very competitive. The Padres had the lead late in two of the games there, and the final game was pretty close. A sweep can actually be kind of thrilling if the games are close. The White Sox Astros series, all four games were, especially games 2, 3, and 4, were all thrillers. But anyway, there was not Ken Caminiti. Now we got a little closer with Chris Smith, 003QX, which I assume is his mother's maiden name, said Terry Kennedy. Now that's getting closer. Terry Kennedy was the starting catcher of the 1984 San Diego Padres. Uh, and they did indeed win a game, but it was not Terry Kennedy who did. Let's give it to Jackson Van Hoser, who says Kurt Bavacqua homered in game two of the 1984 World Series against my Detroit Tigers. That's Jackson who's claiming ownership of the Tigers, not me. Well, that is correct. It was Kurt Bavacqua, one of the many nemesis of Tommy Lasorda. Yes, it was Kurt Bavacqua who got the big home run. He was the designated hitter. He was a designated hitter for the San Diego Padres in that World Series, and he got a couple of big hits. Before we go around the horn and start talking about some of the things that happened in baseball on Saturday and give heap lots of praise north of the border, let's take a look at who owned baseball for August 16th, 2025. Shota Imanaga held the Pirates to one run over 7 innings to earn the 3-1 victory for the Cubs. Big win for the Cubs because they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be one of the wild card teams, and they need to have that pitching save the day over their hitting. And Imanaga, if he could pitch like an ace, well, then do you know what? Maybe the Cubs have a puncher's chance. Jason Alexander, by the way, how sick do you think he is of hearing the George Costanza jokes? I mean, if I were Jason, I would come up with a some sort of nickname like Scooter Alexander. Yeah, then you get Scooter from the Muppets. I don't know. You can't shooter is not. You can't do that in this climate. Uh, I don't know. Fletch. Well, I don't know, something other than Jason Alexander, because he has to know. He can't pitch a game without someone bringing up the fact that he's named Georgia Cassandra. I can't defend him, and I'm still bringing it up, but because I just can't help it. By the way, Jason Alexander, who's his middle name is Raymond. Everyone loves that. Ray Alexander. Ray of Hope. I don't know. All I know is that he had another terrific game. He struck out six Orioles. He didn't walk any in six innings, and the Astros took the 5-4 final as they're holding off the Seattle Mariners. We'll get to the Mariners game in just a bit there. Miles Straw for the Blue Jays hit two home runs, got a couple more hits, and the Blue Jays absolutely humiliated the Texas Rangers 14-2. Half wobs, we're going to go to Justin Verlander, who pitched very well, 7 innings of shutout ball, but the Giants, who are dead, they were doubled up 2-1 by Tampa Bay. Brian Wu was terrific. Brian Wu, 6 innings, he allowed one run, but he took the hard luck 3-1 loss as the Mets wound up losing thanks to a rookie, Nolan McLean. We'll get to that a little bit at the end. Pedro Pajas got 3 for 4. The Cardinals, who just are absolutely face planting, they dropped a 12-8 slugfest to the Yankees, and Dylan Carson got on base 3 times, but Baltimore fell to Houston 5-4. And in that game, in the bunch of games I just rattled off there, Miles Straw was really the big uh, home run hero for the Toronto Blue Jays. But the thing is that there was more than just one hero on the Toronto Blue Jays in their victory yesterday against the Texas Rangers, and it got so bad. And I swear, I know I'm a little bit of a broken record on this, but it got so bad that Rowdy Tellez came in to pitch. They did the whole position player pitching thing. And okay, I get it. That's part of strategy now. It would be nicer if you could, rely on a relief pitcher or maybe have your starting pitcher go a little bit longer. But here's what absolutely blew my mind about what happened in the Blue Jays Rangers game. Tellez came in the seventh. After 6 innings, Bochy, and in Bochy we trust. After that, they brought in Rowdy Tellez to pitch the final 2 innings. Now, I stand by that a baseball team, if it's late, should have the right to wave the white flag. Because after the 6 inning, it was 11-1, and the Tommy Nance got the Rangers out without much of an effort in the 7th inning, and then Tellez came in, and that was basically the Rangers waving the white flag, saying we're not going to use any more of our relievers. We give up. Is that good for baseball? Is that good for baseball? Yeah, it's fun to see Rowdy Tellez, who's kind of an old-fashioned throwback, kind of chubby DH dude on the mound. Sure, that's fun. But it happens so often now. The position players, which give the team the chance to to say, "Hey, we're done. We're done. We're if you're essentially done and you're saying, "Hey, we're going to wave the white flag by having a position player pitch," then why risk the injury? I'm sorry. I know that people are like, "Oh, we can't have that happen." But we can't have that happen. By the way, I got to tell you something really, really weird. This Ranger team got to 6 games above 500 on July 27th, and were knocking on heaven's door at that point. The Rangers at that point had snuck in and had tied for a wild card spot. And I thought, and I said this on the show, I thought with their pitching, if they got DeGrom, they've got Uvalde, they got Bochy managing, they've snuck into a playoff spot at the end of July, and I thought, oh, here we go. Since then, the Rangers have lost 13 out of their last 18 games. They have been in it. They have had the worst record in baseball for the last, with the exception of the Mets, for the last couple of weeks. And I don't and I honestly don't understand why. But I'll tell you something, I do understand how they lost the last couple of games. Do you know why? Because they were playing the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's time we heap some praise onto the Blue Jays and their wonderful season they're having. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at Prize Picks. Now, for those of you who've been following us and you know all about Prize Picks with us, there's the banner. I've lost track of the banner. Whether you're got your eye on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get into the game because Prize Picks is the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up. College football has been far behind. And who knows what's going to happen this year? Is Josh Allen going to have another great year? Aaron Rodgers, he's still playing, right? I am not totally out of it. And Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. And if you use Prize Picks for a few seasons now, and do you know what? I love how simple it is. I can get a lineup in before my coffee finishes brewing. Now, the flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. And Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Picks app today and the code Locked On MLB, and you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On MLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. Flawless ad read. Now, one of my listeners took me to task because we've been heaping a lot of praise on the Milwaukee Brewers, and rightfully so. But Sherry Radway says the Jays did the same thing in the same night, but of course, no mention, no respect. And you know what? Perhaps it's true. Perhaps the Toronto Blue Jays are the Rodney Dangerfield of Major League Baseball, getting no respect. But yesterday, I'll give tons of respect. I mentioned Miles Straw, who got the first multi-home run game in his career the other day. But you looked at that game that they had. You looked at the performance of the Toronto Blue Jays in yesterday's game, and you see one of the things that is one of the strengths of the club. Now they won the night before, 6-5 against the Texas Rangers, and then came back. And you look at the lineup. Yes, you got the home runs from Miles Straw, and he went 4 for 5. Davis Schneider, no relation to the manager. He got on base 5 times, including driving in 4 runs. And now, granted, one of them was a home run off of Rowdy Tellez, one of the reasons why I don't like how position players pitching. But do you know what? It still counts. Bo Bichette. In fact, if you take a look up and down the lines, one of the few players who didn't get a hit was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And although he did get a walk. But you saw Eric Lauder was good. He wasn't great, but he was good. He pitched too many pitches, and they had to go to Tommy Nance, but Tommy Nance did the job. And by the answer, Anthony Dominguez and Tyler Heineman, they went through, did the job as well. Alejandro Kirk contributed. Dalton Varsho contributed. Up and down the lineup, you saw the Toronto Blue Jays were getting production from virtually everybody. And that, in many ways, is one of the keys of this Blue Jays team. Now, I have been really, really critical over the years of John Schneider. I called for him to be fired a couple of times. And you gotta give him credit where credit is due. Because right now, this team, which looked thoroughly mediocre 2 months into the season, has been dominant and dominant up and down, which is one of the reasons why I think Toronto has a very good chance when it comes to October. Obviously, Toronto's going to win this division. Boston's not going to. Even if they wear those green uniforms that they win all the time when they wear them, they're not going to overtake Toronto. And the Yankees, this good season, the good series they're having against St. Louis notwithstanding, they're not going to beat Toronto. Do you know why? I'll give Schneider credit, the manager, who's done a good job of pushing the right buttons and putting the right lineup together. But let's give Mark Shapiro credit. Let's give Ross Atkins, the baseball ops general manager, credit for putting together this roster. This is a roster that's not being carried by one superstar. Now, Bo Bichette is having a very good year. Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is having a very good year. Alejandro Kirk is having a very good year. But you go up and down this lineup: Springer, Clement, Straw, Andres Jimenez is, maybe not as great this year, obviously, but you look, this is their big acquisition with Anthony Santander, who hasn't given them piddly poo. But the rest of the team has been contributing. And it's not the one carrying the team a la Aaron Judge. Gosman, Barrios, Lauer, Bassett, Scherzer in the rotation. Hoffman, who got off to the horrible start, but has turned it around. And their bullpen has shown their bullpen is not going to make anyone forget the nasty boys of the Cincinnati Reds, but it gets the job done. And that's the key for this Blue Jays team. It's not one thing carrying it, it's the depth. The depth of their roster is insane. The depth of their pitching staff is solid. Every aspect of this team is getting the job done, which is one reason why once everything started clicking, took about 2 months for this team to click. But if you take a look at what they've done since then, they have been, they've had, what was their longest losing streak? The longest losing streak, was in April. They had a 5-game losing streak, but they haven't had any prolonged losing streak since April. They've been steady, slow and steady. They had their losing record at the end of April, 16-12 in May, 16-10 in June, 18-8 in August. They're 9-5 so far. 18-8. Sorry, in July. They're so far 9-5 in August. They don't go on these massive long winning streaks, but they also don't lose often. There was their longest winning. They had the 10-game winning streak that was at the end of June. Okay, so they did have one big long one. I do remember that one, and that's basically when they leapfrogged their way into the first place. But they're just consistent. And if one player doesn't have a great game, Vladdy was hitless yesterday. They scored 14 freaking runs yesterday in a game where Vladdy did not get a hit, drive in a run, or score a run. When I saw the score was 14-2, actually, I only saw, like, I was flipping around between games and I was also doing a ton of chores yesterday. So I saw that, oh my God, Toronto was blowing the doors off the dump at the Rogers Center. I did flip over at one point. And by the time I flipped over, I saw Rodney Tellez was pitching, and I saw it was the 7th inning. And I said, oh boy. Now, obviously, a team can get hot. And obviously, if a team like Houston is healthier, they could have a very good shot of going far. Obviously, a team could stumble in a short series. And if you lose game one at home, we've seen that. We've seen wonderful teams get bounced early. So nothing uh, is cemented in stone. But I do want to correct something that I have been saying. I'm saying there's no super team in the American League. And by using the term super team, I suppose what I'm saying is a team filled with superstars, kind of the way that they've assembled superstars in Los Angeles, they've assembled superstars with the Mets and everything like that. But there is one super team in terms of how it's constructed and how they've gone up and down the list and said, let's not have any holes. I'm not going to compare the Blue Jays to the 1998 Yankees, which were the most exquisitely constructed team I've ever seen in my life. But I will say what they learned from that team is you don't have to have a superstar at every position. You just have to have an answer. And the Blue Jays, in a short series, are going to be extraordinarily dangerous because of that, because of their depth, and because of the fact that you can't point to one thing and say, oh, we're going to expose this. And that will mean, expose this the way the Los Angeles exposed the defense of the Yankees, or you could expose a team's bullpen, you could expose a team's lack of depth in their pitching staff the way that Texas did that to Baltimore a few years ago. And Baltimore won 100 some odd games, but it got trounced early because of the lack of depth they had in their starting pitching staff. Can't point to anything like that to Toronto, and that's going to make them really, really dangerous. I'm not saying they're a lock, but what I am saying is that Toronto has assembled the team to win, not the stars, but the team. And we're starting to see that might be the way to do it. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week one even starts off, this is your moment. Now, an MVP, I'm going to say Lamar Jackson. I'm going to say Lamar Jackson is going to be the MVP of the National Football League. But who's going to win it all? The Buffalo Bills. Do you know why? If there's one thing I've learned about the Bills over the years, the Bills never let you down. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Okay, let's just a couple of other things go around about baseball. Hey, the New York Mets. Let's hear it. The fact that Mr. McLean, Mr. Nolan McLean, did the old American Pie thing by going pitching into the sixth inning. The Mets desperately needed a starter to give them length, and they got it. They got it from this rookie pitcher. Mr. McLean, Mr. Nolan McLean, pitched into the sixth inning, made a fabulous defensive play to start a double play, and he got the win. It was a 3-1 win against the Seattle Mariners, and that was look at. I don't know if it's going to be tide turning. We're going to see, but it certainly gave the Mets a desperate boost that they needed because things were completely falling apart. And so that was a huge, huge moment. And if the Mets season starts to turn around, they can thank him. And they can also thank the Milwaukee Brewers, who for two straight games won a game that it looked like they were just going to lose. They were down, what was it, 8-1 on Friday, and somehow wound up winning that game. And yesterday, the whole game, the whole GD game, Cincinnati was in control. They had the lead late, that it was 1-1, but it was clear that Cincinnati was not going to back down. They had the lead in the ninth inning, and then they get another lead in extra innings. And in the end, Milwaukee pulled it off. 14-game winning streak. And Cincinnati must be looking because they should have won two games. They would be right now a wild card team. But Milwaukee, much like what happened in Toronto, there's just no holes on that team. And Cincinnati must be smacking their head a little bit. So again, the Brewers may just run the table. The Brewers may absolutely just run the entire table because there you go. And you got to give LA credit. You got to give LA credit because do you know what? They were playing the San Diego Padres and they handed the ball to Blake Snell. Game one was a real thriller. And game two, they just clobbered him. It was Blake Snell pitching against his old team, clobbered him. And it was a big, now it gave the Dodgers they're in first place by themselves right now, and these head-to-head games are really important. So there's going to be a big rubber game going on today between LA and the San Diego Padres. So it's going to be a very fun day of baseball we have, which is going to be starting up in just a few minutes. And you're going to see if Boston has been continuing to play well. They're playing the Marlins. We're going to see interesting news. Wheeler may be going on the IL, and if you go on the IL in mid-August, that's going to put a dent in your chance of playing in the postseason. Nola, who's not been pitching well, is going for Philadelphia, but without Wheeler, suddenly the National League. I picked the Phillies to win the World Series, and I've been saying they're the team I would be leaning towards. Uvalde and Barrios is going to be a great pitching matchup between the Rangers and the Blue Jays. We're going to see if Cleveland can salvage a game Look, good for the Braves, though. The Braves have had a disappointing season, but they're taking that mentality of if we're going to go down, we're going to take down everyone with us. And they did a number on the Mets, and now they're doing a number on the Guardians. We're going to see the Brewers and the Reds. Quintana for the Brewers. I'm going to try to see if they can make it 15 straight games. And Brewer fans better hope that if that the super long winning streak doesn't have the same ending as the 2017 Cleveland Indians. They were called the Indians then, or the Moneyball A's. Both of them had the 20 some odd uh, winning streak, only to get bounced in the first round. Um, Christian Javier is back on the bump, and getting some of those players back is huge for the Houston Astros as they're going to be going up against Baltimore. Royals, White Sox. So Royals are creeping up. They're above 500 again, and Mikey Yastrzemski homered, much to my mom's delight. Paddock is pitching for the Tigers against the Twins. The Tigers are looking to pad that. The Cubs are going to be playing the Pirates, and the Cubs are trying to hold on to have that home field advantage in the wild card series. Rockies D-backs will be playing in front of friends and family. Actually, the Rockies have been drawing good crowds, even though they stink. The A's have not been drawing good crowds, and they're playing the Angels. You're going to Glasgow and San Diego is going to be the big game in Los Angeles. The Giants are dead against Tampa Bay. The Mets and Mariners are playing in the Little League Park, which should be fun. Clay Holmes is starting for the Mets, and of course, we are going to be we're going to be seeing the big game between the Cardinals and the Yankees. Michaelis pitching for St. Louis, Warren pitching for the Yankees, and we're seeing if the Yankees can dust themselves off and make things right. Okay, let's do the trivia questions. My dog is barking. I take her for a walk. The Blue Jays have a lot of speedsters on their team over the years, but who was the first Blue Jay to steal 60 bases in a season? That is the trivia question. Who was the first Blue Jay to steal 60 bases in a season? Put your answer right down here on YouTube. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, and leave your messages right here on YouTube. Talking about the Blue Jays and giving them their respect. I'm wondering if the Brewers are ever going to lose another game. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.